and more, all within the big picture of our Catholic faith today. On The Simple Truth, I'm Jim Havens. It is Wholeness and Healing Monday, fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul. With our co-host, my lovely wife, Becky Havens. She is a Catholic wife and mother with a passion and calling to educate people about the importance of caring for our bodies that the Lord has blessed us with by living a healthy lifestyle. She helps others to think outside the cultural norms and to be their own advocate while not falling into the many pressures of modern medicine. She's the author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, a 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle. She also wrote a boycott list of over 600 pro-abortion companies. You can get them both for free. Learn more at her website, safehavensmama.com. We do consecrate everything here to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. Our topic today, the vegan diet. And as we get going here, we always want to give the disclaimer, we're not doctors, we're not scientists, we're just regular people looking to live well and raise our family. We believe in objective truth and in asking questions when things do not make sense. We're not giving medical advice, but we do want to offer a forum here today. We know a thing or two, but there's still a ton we don't know. We have some personal experiences, as do you, and we would love to hear from you today. We already heard from some of you in the morning survey that we put out. If you're not on that email list to get the morning survey and you want to be, thestationofthecross.com, go to The Simple Truth, scroll down the page, put your email list. You'll get that survey every Monday morning. But it's always best to call in during the show if you want to make sure to get your response in or your question in. We can't read every survey response. We do our best, and we'll put the phone number out in just a little bit if you'd like to call in today. But Becky, let's get started here. The vegan diet, what intrigues you on this topic?
I mean, this would be one of the diets I would say has the least interest for me, because basically, I think because we've tried to do vegan for a little bit, very briefly, just plants and beans, and we even tried, I think, in the midst of, pregnancies and breastfeeding and all that for me personally. And that was a tough one because you're not getting the protein and you never feel like you've eaten enough. And maybe that's a good thing. I'm not sure. But I felt not very well on it, And so after we did some more research, I kind of thought that, maybe this is not the best diet for, at least for women in childbearing ages. I think it can be useful if you are looking for a specific outcome. If you just want to eliminate things and go totally away from anything processed, just like we talked about last week in the carnivore diet, it's basically a way to eliminate stuff and just feed your body with fruits and vegetables. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. But I think what they are missing is some animal products. I just feel like as I dug deeper, there are some reasons behind the vegan diet that are not really good. They have some strange motivations behind it. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but just a little bit on that.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get to that. And yeah, you have to refresh my memory some. Maybe this is early in our marriage that you're talking about with trying that sort of a diet a little bit. I kind of have a vague recollection of a bit of that. But actually, yeah, as I dive into the data in preparation for this show, actually dangerous for childbearing, for women who are pregnant and specifically on that preborn child. Some real dangers there with a vegan diet. And so we're going to get to some of that data as well. A lot of good data, but some drawbacks as well to this vegan diet or plant-based diet. So what are we talking about? And first, why are we doing this show today? We did the carnivore diet last week. Then I saw a comment that came in under our YouTube video, and it said, I am a vegetarian, almost vegan. I believe a plant-based diet contains all needed nutrients, vitamins, etc. Would you please consider doing an episode, an overview of the plant-based diet? So we said, all right, that seems only fair. We did the carnivore diet. Let's do the vegan diet or the plant-based diet. So many variations of a plant-based diet. There's just vegetarian, which would include all plant-based foods, as well as allowing eggs and dairy. Then there's vegan, which is plant-based foods only, excludes meat, dairy, eggs, and often honey. And many who follow this lifestyle do so for ethical or environmental reasons. Again, we'll get to those motivations in a little bit. Also, something called pescatarian, which is largely a vegetarian diet that also includes seafood. Then there's a whole foods plant-based diet, which is similar to a vegan diet, but this diet it forgets all the ethical sorts of things, some of those odd motivations that maybe the vegan diet carries for many people, and it's focusing more on the health aspect, high in fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, while typically low in fat. Then something called a flexitarian, and this is a broad term used by those who primarily follow a vegetarian or plant-based diet, but allow for some meat, some dairy, some seafood on occasion. So flexitarian, never heard that one before. We did ask folks in the survey today, have you ever tried a vegan or a vegetarian diet? And about 75% of respondents said yes. We had less respondents on this one than on the carnivore diet. But more of those who are responding are telling us, yeah, they've tried it. So we'll get into what they had to share with us a little bit later in the show. But Becky, anything else to share by way of introduction here?
Yeah, I don't understand why everything needs to have a definition or why it has to have like its own name, kind of like the gay and the trans stuff. You know, there are so many definitions that you lose track of what everything is. I don't really see why it matters. Like, nobody really cares what you eat, what kind of diet you're on. Do you know what I mean? It just seems you get lost in it, and it becomes more like a fad, or just like, this is what I'm doing, and maybe because it's cool or that's the latest thing to try. And I feel like my position almost on all diets is just more of a balanced diet. You know, somewhere, you know what I mean, and excluding all processed foods, all dangerous oils. It just seems like if you have a little bit of everything, you're not going to run into too much trouble. But if you're really heavy on one side or really heavy on the other side, that's when you may run into trouble. And I'm talking about long term. I'm not saying short term, or if you're going through cancer treatment. I know that one of the guys that I listen to a lot is Chris Wark, and he's on, I think it's called Chris Beat Cancer, and he shares his own story of overcoming colon cancer and how he went completely on a plant-based diet, not processed vegan, which a lot of vegan food is processed and boxed and stuff like that, but whole foods, and he completely healed himself of that cancer. And so he really promotes that, and I feel like that would be a good way, you know, a good thing to try too. I don't know. Some people try the carnivore diet with cancer too. So it's kind of like, I don't know, who knows what to think. So I'm excited to kind of dive in and learn a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll try to land on some conclusions by the end of the show today with respect to all of this. But yeah, I guess, you know, a couple minutes before the break, let's talk a little bit more about some motivations behind vegan or vegetarian or plant-based diets. We'll get to some of the wacky stuff, I think, when we come back from the break. But I guess just personally, Becky, why my recollection of us doing something like this, I don't remember ever like sitting down and talking about this and saying, let's do some sort of a plant-based diet or anything like that. Certainly, I don't think talking about doing a vegan diet. I think I remember seeing a documentary with you in our early years of marriage, and it was pretty convincing about I think it was showing how animals were being really mistreated. And that was part of it, right? So there is an ethical aspect to that when animals are being treated as mere objects, mere things, and not being treated with the respect that an animal deserves. Now, they're not persons, they're not people, so they aren't to be treated like people. We can't eat them, and we're going to talk about that, but they aren't to be treated just as like objects that we can just, have this assembly line where they're just cramped up, and it's really quite disgusting, the whole process of that. I think we saw some images of that, and that kind of soured us on eating meat for a little bit. But I also remember a sugar cleanse, like a 30-day sugar cleanse, and I feel like this maybe had something to do with that. I remember eating a lot of vegetables that were in kind of like almost like a burrito or a taco sort of thing with like a rice paper wrapping around them that we were dipping in some sort of a sauce or something. They were not bad, but I remember it was difficult to eat what we were eating on that diet. It wasn't a whole lot of fun. But anything further you can share with us? Why would we have gone that route?
Yeah, it was short-term type of things. Yeah, the sugar cleanse was, I think there was meat incorporated, but it was removal of all sugars and dairy, and it was heavy plant-based because the woman who did it was vegan, and so we would add in meat from time to time just for ourselves. So that was the first part. The second one later on, yes, a documentary, which I cannot recall the name of it. And it was sad to watch, and it does turn people off to meat because you see how conventional, farming is done, which is not ideal. And I think that's why it's ideal to find good farmers and farms you can trust, where the animals are and in a healthy way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you might be hearing here, we are combating a little bit of adversity here on the program today as we go the best possible kind in terms of a little baby that we are fostering that Becky's holding there. He's wanting to get in on the action, but also a little bit of sickness that we had kind of go through the family. So you might hear that in me sound a little bit different today, but yeah, we just, as we go, there are going to be things that are outside of our control that even if we are eating perfectly, even if we are living with everything in our control perfectly, and we're never going to be perfect, but we're striving towards doing well, towards perfection. Even in those cases, there's still going to be trials. We got to embrace the cross. We got to know how to offer up those sufferings in great love of our Lord Jesus. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network presents Saints and Seasons. On February 5th, we celebrate the feast of St. Agatha, Virgin and Martyr. Agatha was born to a wealthy noble family in Sicily around the year 230. The cities of Catania and Palermo both claim to be her birthplace. Agatha had consecrated her virginity to Christ, but during the Decian persecution in the year of our Lord 251, her beauty attracted the nefarious attention of Quintianus, the Roman governor. He had Agatha sent to a brothel in the hope of weakening her resolve against his advances. But the young virgin maintained her faith and chastity, and the frustrated governor first imprisoned her and then ordered her tortured. Agatha was stretched on the rack and scorched with hot irons, but she remained steadfast, and Quintianus angrily ordered that her breasts be cut off. Thrown back into prison, Agatha was consoled by a vision of St. Peter himself, who healed her wounds. The confounded governor had Agatha thrown onto hot coals and shards of pottery, after which lengthy torture she finally expired and received her heavenly crown as an earthquake shook the city. Due to her tortures, she is a patroness of wet nurses, those who make or ring bells, and against breast cancer, and she is named in the canon of the Mass. Also honored on this day are Saint Avitus of Vienne, the birthday into heaven of Saint Paul Miki and the martyrs of Nagasaki, and many other martyrs, confessors, and holy virgins. For more about the saints and seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
I have no clue what my future looks like. I know who my future is, and it lies in the hands of Christ. I'm not worried about where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do. My life, I want it to be His, and there's such a freedom in that. I never, ever thought that I would find freedom in a laid-down, surrendered life to Christ.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here. We're talking about the vegan or plant-based diet here today on The Simple Truth on Wholeness and Healing Monday. And so we're gonna get into the data, ease into the data here. I found this great article from the Journal of the Missouri State Medical Association that has a lot of good data in there. Also has a great summary on how plant-based diets, basically the history of plant-based diets. So kind of using this as my baseline today rather than the Cleveland Clinic, but let's go to it. It says here that throughout human history, different groups have adhered to plant-based diets. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Pythagoras extolled the health benefits of a vegetarian diet and taught that animal slaughter was immoral. This tenet was based on his belief that the immortal soul was reincarnated after death of the body. He and his disciples ate a simple diet of bread, honey, and vegetables. Thus, until the 1800s, a plant-based diet was known widely as the Pythagorean diet. Many religions feature a long tradition of adhering to a vegetarian diet, including both Buddhism and Jainism. Much like Pythagoras's followers, these religions approach the plant-based diet through the lens of nonviolence. Also says here that many choose a plant-based diet in the pursuit of health, out of concern for animal welfare, or as a way to reduce their environmental footprint. Some have also been driven in part by celebrity endorsement, media attention, and popular documentaries. Regardless of the reasons for their change, more Americans than ever are seeking to incorporate more plant-based foods into their diet. And so just to say a word, first of all, on kind of the weird, like, New Age, reincarnation, Hinduism, Buddhism sort of aspect to this, where some people might think it's immoral to eat animals because basically there's like human souls that are now becoming, I don't really know exactly what they think about this way of reincarnation, that humans who die, their human soul can then be reincarnated as an animal of some kind. It's a pretty strange belief, but these beliefs are out there. And so the Catholic Church, I think, brings some sense to it and just kind of lays down the hammer here, black and white, about what reality is and is not. Catechism of the Catholic Church 10:13 says that death is the end of man's earthly pilgrimage, of the time of grace and mercy which God offers him so as to work out his earthly life in keeping with the divine plan and to decide his ultimate destiny. When the single course of our earthly life is completed, we shall not return to other earthly lives. It is appointed for men to die once. There is no reincarnation after death. Also here, with respect to eating animals or the ethical treatment of animals, which oftentimes is this exaggerated sort of thing that sort of treats animals like people rather than animals. The other danger, though, is treating an animal like a thing and an object and not, again, the respect that an animal would deserve. And so we want to really treat animals like animals, things like things, people like people, and not get confused about all this. This falls under the 7th commandment, actually, you shall not steal. And so under respect for the integrity of creation, we find this under the 7th commandment in the Catechism. The 7th commandment enjoins respect for the integrity of creation. Animals, like plants and inanimate beings, are by nature destined for the common good of past, present, and future humanity. Animals are God's creatures. He surrounds them with his providential care. By their mere existence, they bless him and give him glory. Thus, men owe them kindness. We should recall the gentleness with which saints like St. Francis of Assisi or St. Philip Neri treated animals. And God entrusted animals to the stewardship of those whom he created in his own image. That's us. That's human beings. Hence, it is legitimate to use animals for food and clothing. They may be domesticated to help man in his work and leisure. Medical and scientific experimentation on animals is a morally acceptable practice if it remains within reasonable limits and contributes to caring for or saving human lives. Finally, it is contrary to human dignity to cause animals to suffer or die needlessly. It is likewise unworthy to spend money on them that should as a priority go to the relief of human misery. One can love animals, one should not direct to them the affection due only to persons, which is really a different category of love altogether. Really the love of animals versus the love of persons is a very different thing, although we only have one word for it. So, Becky, a lot there, but anything that jumps out to you?
Yeah, I was reading a bit about that as well. And a lot of what's behind a plant-based diet is that it's best for the environment. So once you kind of read about that, I feel like there's going to be some difficulties here because not everybody is thinking that way. You know what I mean? Because I don't even know where they're getting this information and why. There's some charts out there that it kind of goes through about how much water each type of food takes, and it has beef as the highest with almost 2,000 gallons of water required to make 1 pound of beef. And so that's their way of saying, so therefore you need to eradicate all cows because somehow we don't have enough water. I don't know. It doesn't make sense in my mind because we have a lot of water in our planet, and it just seems like there's a different agenda going on. And when you have those agendas, it turns me off immediately because it's like I'm not really interested in that type of thing. I would do it more for like a health reason, but not because I'm worried that climate change is coming upon us. You know what I mean? So that's kind of bothersome when you read about that, and that they're taking that and they're using that in their platform, and it's working. You know what I mean? It's becoming a popular idea. So that's problematic for sure.
Right. Yeah, we want to avoid that whole ideology of climate alarmism that really starts to dehumanize people in order to sort of save the earth, because it's an existential. We people are an existential threat to the planet. This is the kind of stuff you have John Kerry running around proclaiming as the climate czar for the Biden administration. Now, actually, he's been tossed aside, and now they've got John Podesta, of all people, in there. I don't want to get too much into the politics here today, but yeah, it's a ridiculous sort of thing. And so, yeah, if this is a motivation for the plant-based diet, not a good motivation for it. And so one thing I guess to say before we head into the data, just on the health effects, which I think is what probably people are most interested in, is to say, like, this is an interesting tool to use for I think deeper conversations with loved ones. If somebody's on a vegan or a vegetarian or a plant-based diet, to maybe go a little deeper, especially if they've fallen away from the Catholic faith, to find out what the motivations are. Maybe it gets into some of these this Eastern New Age religions and the reincarnation stuff, or the climate alarmism and all of this. And so it's good to take that as an opportunity to kind of dig into some of these things carefully with someone and try to help them to see past the ideology or the celebrity or whatever it is that is motivating them down that road. It could be just political ideology as well. But as far as the data, as far as the health goes, there are a lot of really good health reasons why one would do a plant-based diet. And so here's a few of them. One is when it comes to obesity, it says that according to recent data published by the CDC, just over 42% of Americans are obese. And that's because, as we talked about last week, the average American diet is often characterized by its high intake of processed foods, refined carbohydrates, added sugars, unhealthy fats, and low intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. A systematic review published in January 2020, analyzing 40 diet and weight-related case studies and cohort studies, reported that those following a vegan diet were less likely than those following any other diet to be overweight, and they had lower BMIs, body mass indexes. So yeah, when it comes to obesity, a check in the favor of the vegan diet especially, but the plant-based diet here. And this is one that I think as we start to see the data come out on this, what we're going to find is that where we see overlap with the carnivore diet, that a lot of the good that is taking place, how much of that good is simply removing all those bad things that are part of the average American diet, removing those processed foods, the refined carbohydrates, the added sugars, the unhealthy fats, all these things being taken out. So maybe just taking those things out is what we're seeing by and large are the greatest health benefits of both the plant-based or the meat-based diet. That seems logical to me. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's like 100% true. And then I think you can sustain on diets like that for quite a while. But then I think where you run into trouble is then deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies. And I know, when you and I were doing one of our diets, we dropped weight like we weren't even trying. people were like, oh my goodness, Jim looks so skinny, and you had just lost 30 pounds like nothing, within like a few months. And same for me. And you do start to feel like, yes, you're losing weight. But I don't think you're intentionally trying to lose weight, but you're also losing a ton more. So, fruits and vegetables can only give you so many of your nutrients. I think also a lot of studies come out and say that our soil is totally depleted from the nutrition that we need and the way that it used to be for many reasons. And so because of that, you're left with these nutritional deficiencies. And I know a lot of vegans who then started eating meat because especially they're becoming low in B vitamins. And then you're starting to have some issues, especially if you're pregnant and nursing, then you're going to have major issues because pregnancy can deplete that in general. So I think where people are ending up is, they're healthier and to a degree because they're not obese, and so a lot of their inflammation has gone down, but now they're becoming more like sticks. You know what I mean? Like they need a little bit of fat to them. They need a little bit of meat, So a lot of people then bounce back and add that in a little bit, some fish and some meat. And it's tricky because you read all these things that, well, don't eat fish because there's mercury, and don't eat meat because there's soy, and don't eat vegetables because there's pesticides. And at some point you have to just be like, all right, I have to just trust in God's plan that he's going to just sustain me from what I'm able to get, because again, it's very expensive to do certain types of diets, and leave the rest to him, just do your best. And as long as you're not like overdosing in one way or the other, I feel like that's probably the best bet, to kind of stay somewhere in the middle long term,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go to a few other positives. One is cardiac health. Says that in addition to helping improve insulin sensitivity and decrease BMI, a vegan diet may reduce risk of cardiovascular disease and improve cardiac function. This is of particular importance given that the CDC ranked heart disease as the leading cause of death in the United States in 2020. And the CDC is not counting abortion, the ongoing mass murder of our littlest brothers and sisters in the leading causes of death, or else that would be number one by far. Continuing on, it says a meta-analysis featuring 7 prospective cohort studies reviewed heart health in vegetarians versus omnivores. The analysis concluded that those who do not consume meat have significantly lower rates of both ischemic heart disease and all-cause mortality. A recent experimental study swapped amateur athletes' omnivorous diets to a vegan diet and studied the athlete's cardiac structure via echocardiogram prior to and following the diet. This study suggested that the actual structural remodeling of the heart can occur when switching from an omnivorous diet to a plant-based diet. Let's finish this up. The structural remodeling of the heart, albeit noted in healthy athletes, may play a role in the documented improvement of health in those with cardiovascular disease who adopt a plant-based diet. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Download the app to take our programming with you wherever you go. Hear what listeners are saying about the regularly updated iCatholic Radio app.
The programs on iCatholic Radio are uplifting, educational, and have served to deepen my faith as a Catholic. Thank you for this amazing station.
Download the free iCatholic Radio app in your Android or Apple store today. If you already have the app, please consider giving us a 5-star review or telling a friend about it. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest, prayer, or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience by finding us wherever you enjoy podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, and the free iCatholic Radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Hi, Joe McLean here, host of A Catholic Take, heard on the Station of the Cross each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. A bold synthesis of information and inspiration, keeping you up to date on the news and issues that you may have missed from a courageous Catholic perspective. That's A Catholic Take, weekday morning, 7 a.m. right here on the Station of the Cross and the free iCatholic Radio mobile app. Download it today. God love you.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network is dedicated to answering the critical need of access to quality, consistent, professional, and proven Catholic programming. We cannot rely on other media outlets to properly represent our church. Catholic radio reaches Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and non-believers alike. As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent of your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here, talking about the vegan diet or the plant-based diet today. If you want to call in any question or comment, do you have some experience with a vegan or plant-based diet that you'd like to share with us? 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. We did ask in the survey this morning, if you have tried the vegan or plant-based diet, why did you do so? How long did you do it? Some of the answers we got were that I wanted to try something new. And also people were saying how healthy it is. I did it for a year. Another said 1 year and continuing. Another said for health reasons, still doing it mostly. Started in 2019, so quite a while there. We'll get into some of the experiences that we heard, but first, just to finish up a summary on the health benefits. So we talked about obesity, cardiac health, also type 2 diabetes. Evidence suggests that a plant-based diet can help patients with type 2 diabetes achieve weight loss and improve glycemic control. Hypertension, those that followed either a vegetarian or a vegan diet reported decreases in blood pressure, although the decrease was more significant in those that followed a fully vegan diet. Also cancer, although many studies have been inconclusive as to whether or not vegetarian diets reduce risk of specific cancers, some studies have suggested that eating processed meats, such as ham, bacon, and salami, pose an increased risk of developing cancer. In fact, the World Health Organization classified processed meats as a Group 1 carcinogen and red meats as a Group 2 carcinogen. Some meta-analyses suggest that plant-based diets may be associated with a reduced risk of certain cancers, particularly colorectal cancer. The high intake of fiber, antioxidants, and phytochemicals in plant-based diets may contribute to their protective effects against cancer development. So a lot there, just to point out that we did talk about it last week in the carnivore diet, that not all meats are the same. You would want to avoid certain processed meats, altogether, and eat clean, lean meats as part of the carnivore diet. It's not really helping you if you're eating terrible types of meats. And the same is true with a plant-based diet. It's not... you could say I'm on a plant-based diet, but you're still eating sort of like plant-based junk food, like donuts and cinnamon rolls, imitation meat, and various things like that. And so you could be eating things that are high in sugar still, and say that you're on this vegan or plant-based diet. Perhaps you could try to say that, but that's not going to really be a very healthy diet if you're not cutting out those things that you ought to be cutting out. And then the final thing just to say here before we go to Becky is fiber is an important factor here. A startling 95% of Americans are deficient in fiber, which is likely related to ingesting high amounts of processed foods, little fruit, vegetables, legumes, or whole grains. A plant-based diet is by nature high in fiber, whereas animal products are devoid of fiber. And so because of that, there's some good health benefits from that as well, that basically saying that Americans who have adequate fiber intake are nearly all vegetarian or vegan, and incorporation of a more plant foods into the standard American diet could provide some mitigation against common chronic diseases. So helpful in terms of fiber intake. Becky, any thoughts?
Yeah, and I would say that I think it, as usual, what I'm saying is I think it depends on the person and what the person needs. So you can have a high meat diet and still get enough fiber, but I think that's probably not what usually happens. So I think you need to cater each diet to your health needs and see what's going to be best for each person, because I think everybody's going to also react differently to a diet. Some people cannot do a carnivore diet and it makes them not feel well. Some people, they try the plant-based and they find themselves really high in something called oxalates, which can happen when you like overdose on too many vegetables or soy or nuts and seeds. And I think the way to balance that out is to have an adequate amount of calcium, which where you're going to get calcium, the biggest source is usually from dairy or eggs and things like that. And so it makes sense that all the foods kind of go together, just like vitamins go together. So it makes sense that you would have to, eat a balanced diet to get everything that you're needing.
Right. Yeah, it definitely seems like a balanced diet is the way to go. A clean, balanced diet where you're not eating the processed foods, you're not eating the junk, you're not eating all the sugar, but you're eating a good and balanced diet. Yeah, you're eating the fruits and vegetables, but also eating the good meats. And it just seems like that makes logical sense, and also based on the data seems to make a lot of sense. You're going to get a lot of these health benefits that we're talking about with the carnivore diet, with the vegan diet, and you're not going to get a lot of the drawbacks, things that we talked about last week with the carnivore diet. Here's what the drawbacks are in terms of the vegan diet. There are nutrient deficiencies. So vegan diets may be deficient in certain nutrients such as vitamin B12, iron, calcium, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D. Also, it says that vitamin B12 is an important cofactor in DNA synthesis, and deficiency can lead to anemia and severe neurological dysfunction. It is especially critical that pregnant persons, it says pregnant women, I would say pregnant moms, ensure adequate vitamin B12 levels, as a deficiency can lead not only to neural tube defects, but long-term consequences in weight management and brain development, affecting the unborn child past delivery into its adulthood. Also, protein quality. Plant-based protein sources may not provide all essential amino acids in optimal ratios compared to animal-based protein sources. Combining various plant protein sources can help ensure adequate protein intake and amino acid balance. And then there's social and practical challenges that it says it may your limited food options might require greater effort and more difficulty to eat out with various different people to find the vegan friendly options, all that. We heard the same thing with respect to the carnivore diet. And then here are a couple other issues. This I thought was quite interesting. One was that recently published research has identified other potential risks of plant-based diets which deserve further study, whereas older studies have shown that persons following a plant-based diet have lower bone mineral density than those who eat meat. Evidence published in late 2020 suggests that fracture risk may be higher as well. It is prudent for those on a plant-based diet to ensure sufficient intake of calcium and vitamin D containing foods. Careful attention to intake of fortified foods such as plant-based milks may be helpful. And then according to another recent study published in the British medical journal, hemorrhagic stroke was cited as a risk for vegetarians and vegans. This study compared the rates of stroke between meat eaters, pescatarians, and vegetarians and found a statistically significant increase in hemorrhagic stroke in vegetarians compared to meat eaters. Also, I did see that inconclusive at this time in terms of studies with respect to the effect of a vegan or plant-based diet on testosterone levels. And so I started to kind of go down that path and say, well, what about, I know people are eating a lot of soy when they're on a vegetarian diet or vegan diet a lot of times. And does that have something to do with it? And there are a lot of studies on soy and testosterone levels, but a lot of the studies have conflicting conclusions. So hard to say, but it seems like there's something there when I look at the data that maybe isn't super clear yet, but could possibly have an effect on testosterone levels as well, which wouldn't affect just men, but certainly would affect men. It also affects women as well. Becky, any thoughts on some of the drawbacks here?
Yeah, I know that it is heavy on soy, and some people say that soy is actually the way to go now for women with hormonal cancers. And they compare it to one of the chemo drugs that they take. I don't know. I've read conflicting things as well, and it's hard to say because a lot of the older studies are like, soy's bad, don't touch soy. And then a lot of the newer studies are saying that It can have phytoestrogens, which can actually help balance women who are have hormonal imbalance or having cancer issues from hormones. So it's hard to say, but I know that there are a lot of studies on soy infant formula and babies. And that's interesting because a lot of formulas have soy in it. And as we've been researching formula lately because of the new baby that we're with, the government will pay for soy-based formula, but they won't pay for any other formulas. And so it just kind of shows you where the attention is. You know, you have to make a strong case if you want to get an organic formula covered. And it can be a serious medical reason. It can't just be because the baby is fussy, which soy makes babies fussy. And so it's just interesting to see, you know, where the government has a role in here and that they are pushing something. And soy has a lot of downfalls for babies. And that's probably the number one population that we have that's consuming it because of the infant formula. And there's studies saying that it suppresses thyroid function. And they even have, you know, lawsuits going against soy for babies who've developed thyroid function and, you know, different types of issues. So I think that it's all going to start coming out and thinking like, what are we doing here? You know, again, when anything is like heavily based on one thing, you're going to have an issue. So if a baby's all they're eating is soy formula, and there's a lot of negatives that we know about soy, that baby's going to have problems with digestion and thyroid and hormone issues, especially later in life. And there's a ton of studies on that. So it was really interesting to see that study based. I think it says another study found that twice as many soy-fed children developed diabetes as those in a control group that were breastfed or received a milk-based formula. So the data is out there. Why they push it for babies, I'm not really sure. I'm assuming because it's cheaper and it's easy to make. And, you know, milk-based formula, look, they're trying to eliminate cows. They're trying to eliminate animals. And that's kind of all stringing through the government. So it makes sense, you know, that there's a deep down agenda in here somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about the vegan diet or vegetarian diet, plant-based diet. If you have any comments, questions on it today, give us a call, 1-877-511-5483. Maybe you have some experience with a diet that is plant-based that you'd like to share, 1-877-511-5483. We did ask in the survey today, if you have tried a vegan or vegetarian diet, what did you experience in terms of any positive or negative consequences? Jennifer in Rochester, New York said more energy, fewer aches, general sense of well-being, and better sleep. Katerina from Newton, Massachusetts said, I was constantly sick. I had very weak immune system, always tired with no energy and huge headaches. I also lost way too much weight. And then another said, lost weight, better cholesterol, feel better overall. We also asked any good resources on this topic that were helpful to you that you'd like us to share. One person mentioned a book by Dr. Michael Greger and another book by Dr. Neil Barnard. Didn't give the names of the books. And again, none of these resources I have any knowledge of, so I just present them basically as recommendations from others in the audience. Another person said, I've seen some good documentaries lately that have piqued my interest in this lifestyle. Also, in my mid-60s, I'm interested in staving off family history of heart diseases and diabetes and dementia. And then another said, the books Eat to Live and How Not to Die. And I would say here that, those studies that we're talking about, possible issues with bone density and fractures, I would think that would be particularly concerning as you get older. And so I would say, it seems to me, if I were in my 70s, 80s, I mean, I would probably say I would be doing everything I could do to make sure that my bones were as strong as possible at that point. You don't want to have weak bones and fractures in your older years. And so I think that's something to be aware of when it comes to the vegan, the vegetarian, plant-based diet. We've got more to go when we get back. But again, if you want to call in, we'd love to hear from you. That's the highest priority here is to get your calls in. If you want to call in and share anything today, any questions, comments that you have, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. And yeah, just some personal anecdotal evidence here when they're talking about various people who chimed in on the survey, and they're saying they lost weight, some saying lost too much weight. Yeah, Becky, what you were mentioning earlier, when we tried something like this and there was some significant weight loss pretty quickly, it didn't seem like a healthy weight loss. It seemed like a gaunt sort of weight loss. It didn't seem quite right. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. A pro-life public interest law firm based in Chicago says the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or FACE Act, is unconstitutional. Thomas More Society attorneys plan to appeal convictions rendered last week against 6 pro-life advocates. They say that government prosecutors used thin evidence to argue that there was intent to interfere with the operation of the abortion facility, and they say there are problems with abortion advocates' testimony. Noting vigorous FACE Act prosecution of peaceful pro-life demonstrators and only 4 prosecutions out of hundreds of patently violent acts by abortion advocates, 2 members of Congress suggest it is time to scuttle the FACE Act. This is Life News Radio. Isn't life an awesome gift? Married couples have the power to co-create an eternal life with God that will last forever. God has also designed us so that we can plan, can order our families effectively, naturally, and without the artificial means of chemicals or barriers. Register for classes in NFP, Natural Family Planning, near you, online at ccli.org or call 800-745-8252. Mark Houck was found innocent of FACE Act crime 1 year ago. Today, his bid for a seat in the U.S. House is gaining traction in Pennsylvania. Catholic Votes Accountability Project gives his Republican opponent only a D rating on life and family issues, and that may explain Houck's recent endorsements from state Republican groups. Mississippi House members are overwhelmingly supporting Medicaid coverage in pregnancy. The prenatal care bill now heads to the state Senate. And New Hampshire has ended legislation aimed at creating constitutionally unlimited abortion. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here. Becky is author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, also wrote a boycott list of over 600 pro-abortion companies. You can get both of those free resources over at her website, safehavensmama.com, safehavensmama.com. Talking about the vegan diet today, plant-based diets. If you want to call in, last chance to get that call in. Any question or comment, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Becky, we did have a comment or a question come in here from Nancy in Syracuse, New York. She says, my concerns are gleaning enough nutrients from a meatless diet. Also, costs of vegan foods and concerns about ingredients in overprocessed vegan substitutes for common dairy and meat products. For example, the Beyond Burger. Becky, any thoughts for Nancy here?
Yeah, I mean, those are my concerns too with it. So I'm right there with you. I know that, there are some better options in the vegan area. If you're like, for me, I'll just use this as an example. I love mayonnaise, and so I have a hard time getting away from Hellmann's mayonnaise, but it really is not a good mayonnaise. It's like seed oils and processed and refined and has gross preservatives in it. But for some reason, I've tried it like every other mayonnaise and they're all disgusting. And so I did try a vegan mayonnaise because our local co-op does this one salad with the vegan mayonnaise in it. I'm like, I'll just try it. And the ingredients are not awful and they're way better than Hellmann's. So I'm grateful for that option, and so you can find different things that are going to be a better option than just the conventional food that is out there that we grew up with, like the standard mayonnaise that we grew up with. And if you don't have the option to make your own or have tried it and it doesn't work very well, then you can try something like that. So I'm not shunning all vegan things. I know a lot of it is that meat stuff. I'm not quite sure like what the meat is. I think it's like beans, and I know I've made like a bean burger before, and it was really good. So if you need to get some good fiber in and want to substitute that occasionally, I think that's a good idea to try different things. I think just like regular food, that's processed, that you're buying in the freezer section or the refrigerator section, that has all the nasty byproducts and ingredients in it. The vegan stuff does too. It's the same in the gluten-free diet. So you can go gluten-free, but if you're buying all the mixes and all the things that just say gluten-free on it, they're still adding the same amount of sugar, the same amount of like preservatives that you might find in a regular thing. They're just taking out the wheat. You know what I mean? So you have to be careful when you start substituting, that you're not just substituting for something that could be worse, actually. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just a thought I had.
Yeah, great. We also had a question come in that goes as follows. Once we are aware of the health benefits of a plant-based diet, I feel we are obligated to follow a plant-based diet because care of the body is second in priority to care of the soul. Do you agree? And so I guess just to kind of rephrase this, I think what we're hearing here is basically a couple things. One is the truth that care of the soul, number one. Care of the body, though, number two, also very important. In fact, they go together. You could say 1A, 1B in a certain sense. Certainly the care of our souls is number one, because that is where we are making decisions in terms of to love God or not, to sin or to choose virtue. And so that's really where our freedom lies. Our bodies, though, the health of our bodies is very important because that's intimately tied to our souls. And that's who we are. We are a unity of body and soul. That's why we do this show, Wholeness and Healing Monday, because of the importance of this. And so, so what we choose with our hearts, with our souls, affects our bodies. And so I think what we're being asked here is to say, once we're aware of the health benefits of a particular diet, now here she's saying, or he's saying that the plant-based diet. And so I would say, let's take out the plant-based diet, because I think we're not really saying that the plant-based diet is the best diet. But let's say once you are aware that there is a difference in what we're doing in terms of eating, in terms of diet, and the effect on the body, once you're aware that one way is way better than another way, let's say eating the processed foods, eating all the sugars, all of that, versus not doing that, and that one is going to be way healthier. You could also think of smoking like this, right? Once you know that the effects of smoking are long-term, it's likely going to cause cancer if you live long enough in your body. And so you shouldn't really probably do that, right? It's just, but she's saying here, or he's saying here, I don't know who the listener, the caller is here on this, but saying that once you are aware of that, then are we obligated to do it because the health is so important for our bodies? Becky, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say yes, to the best of our abilities and to the best of our financial ability. The answer would be yes. It's like what you said with smoking or excess drinking or anything that is going to cause harm to your body. Once you're aware that this is bad, this is dangerous, it's time to stop. We're obligated to stop. I mean, that can go in so many different areas of our lives, even sin or bad habits or vices and such. And it's a process. So you keep going and do the best that you can. And once you found something that is good and healthy and works, it would only make sense that it would be best for us to continue to follow that. And I think it's just at that point, then, is your will strong enough? Are you strong enough to keep going in that area? And that's where you need to find the virtue in all of this as well. Because it probably is not easy to go right to a plant-based diet. I mean, you're cutting everything out, and people are probably having immediate effects because they're leaving behind a ton of junk. And that's not easy. And I think it's great when people start on new diets and make the resolution to go in that direction, because they have, the desire to strengthen their body and heal their body. And that's a good thing. That's a good virtue. And it's a matter of just, making it a habit and continuing on that path and modifying if it needs modification, and then continuing on. It doesn't mean you do a diet and then you go right back to eating the junk you were eating before. That's pointless. It's now a new lifestyle, a new habit that you've formed. And in order to care for your body in the best way possible, you would continue to go down that path. So I think that's what the caller is saying, that yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And just thinking it through here, I mean, it seems like all four of the cardinal virtues are present in what we're talking about here, right? Prudence in terms of right reason. We want to be prudent in our choices. Temperance, having that self-control to moderate our appetites. Just because you would like to eat that box of donuts doesn't mean you have to, right? We should have that discipline to moderate that appetite and redirect it to where it would be better served, which might require some fortitude, right? To do the hard thing that is before you. And then also that sense of justice, to give your body what you owe yourself, right? Which is not to be unhealthy, for that momentary pleasure of the taste of something, to be doing damage to your body, especially if this is habitual, long-term damage. And I just want to give hope to people that are out there that maybe you've been down the wrong road on this, and you really have to make some big changes in lifestyle, in terms of eating habits and things like that you can do it. You can definitely do it, to just start with a small change here, a small change there, but to be committed, to be consistent, keep working those good habits, and over time you will get there. Becky, any final words before we head out here?
No, I think you're exactly right. It's just a matter of virtue and continuing on to do what God's calling you to do.
Yes. Yeah, great. And for that, we need God's grace, right? On our own, we're going to have some big problems being virtuous, but by God's grace, we can keep growing, keep advancing in that right direction that he is calling us to keep growing in him, in his grace, like true branches in the true vine. We are so blessed to have the truth, the goodness, the beauty of God before us. All we need to do is say yes and keep moving forward. God bless you.